our teachers, including our English teachers, Gina Ink and Russ Anderson, who put this whole thing together. Our tech department, who runs this seamlessly,
I'm kidding. No, it's
so
not that
special
one.
this hour, our guests, right here, our friend grads. They were once like you, sitting in the auditorium, reading their work from the Writers' Week stage. We think the world of these graduates and hundreds of other students that weren't able to make it today. One day, maybe it'll be you back up here. As a way to have some fun with our different eras of Writers' Week, we gave each grad the prompt to frame their presentation about a different Taylor Swift song. Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Their presentations will not be about a particular song necessarily, but they might share a story about a time they were able to shake it off, or about a specific school song. When was the last time they were fearless? Maybe it's just a story about karma. Get it? Yeah. We're excited to find out. Please join me in welcoming first Megan Marley.
Thank you. So I am, like your teachers, I am a high school English teacher myself. So I don't write now too much. I write some for myself and some with my classes, and some for grad school. So these have come from a few different things. I have two pieces to share with you today. The first one is one I wrote with the Taylor Swift prompt and thinking about things. So the title of this one is Everything Has Changed. And I wrote a version, and then I reframed it. I thought it worked better as a letter to my 16-year-old self. So this is a letter from this me to the me that was sitting in your seats. So, dear 16-year-old Megan. So I guess I should start out by giving you a few basic facts. This is you writing to yourself from the future. Well, it may astound you to think about what life will be like at over twice your current age. I mentally don't feel all that different than I did then, balancing tech rehearsals, classes and homework, orchestra, and cross country. I'm not writing to tell you everything about your future, though. I won't even pretend to have all the answers, but I do have, I guess, some advice for you. I don't always remember exactly what it was like for us when we were 16, but I do have the benefit of teaching high school students, so I hear about that lived experience on a regular basis. One of the things that always makes me smile is when students have birthdays and they say things like, I can't believe I'm already 16, or I don't feel like I'm old enough to be 18. My response to them is usually something like, yep, I don't feel my age either, because I don't. In many ways, I still mentally feel like I did when I was 9 or 15 or 22, but I know that's not true. I'm a full adult now. I may be on TikTok, you'll understand when you need to. But I have questions I have to ask students to explain to me, and most of my weekends are spent reading Llama Llama Red Pajama over and over again and playing peekaboo. Don't get me wrong, I love my life, but sometimes I stop and think about it and it all just feels very surreal. Life is not the same now as it was when we were 16, even if that's the age I feel in my head, and I don't feel like anyone should really trust me to take care of a house, never mind a child, but I'm not 16 anymore. Everything has changed, just a little bit at a time. Do you remember when we were 9 and our cousin Katie was 16? Doesn't she seem so old and mature? And now you're there, at that age. We have these reframes and checkpoints in our lives of older people, and we imagine what it must be like to be them, ideas of what it means to be that age or have that responsibility. Then, when we get there and we still feel like ourselves, we feel like we're not actually that thing, that we haven't earned it, or that it's not real. This happens for ages, but it happens for other things too. It's still surreal to me sometimes that entire classes of students trust me to lead their learning or ask me for advice, but they do. It feels that way too when I think about being a mom. You grew up with these models of what a mom is or can be, and then when I got there, I just still felt like me. But not feeling like you fit the label doesn't mean that you don't. It might just mean that the label fits you differently. Our mom stayed home with us and our siblings, and that worked for our family. She was and is a great mom. As a mom myself now, I'm continuing to work, and that decision makes a lot of sense for our own family and for our own self. Even on this objective thing, though, I'm already different from our mom, already different from that main model of motherhood that we have. Even if I did stay home, though, I'd be a different kind of mom because I'm me. So, I know you're not exactly worrying about motherhood just yet, nor should you be, but I do know that this idea of doing things the way you're supposed to, of living up to expectations, might ring true for you. There's so much out there for us to try and do. I don't want to give away the details, but we don't jump straight from tech rehearsals and cross-country practice to owning a home and being responsible for a child. There's stuff that happens in between, and we move gradually from one place to the next, each step along the way preparing us. We become different people by the time we get there. You're a plant person now, can you believe that? But it's not sudden transformation. We get there step by step, moving just a little outside our newly expanded comfort zone each time. We're constantly changing and learning and growing. Last year, I became one of those English teachers out on maternity leave. When I came back, one of my students, Kyle, was asking about how my son was doing. He's great, I remember telling Kyle, just recently started rolling over. I looked at this high school senior, clearly uncertain how to respond to this news, and added, isn't it weird to think that there was a time when people were excited that you could roll over? He smiled and nodded, moving back to his work. I tell you about this now, though, because the way a baby learns and grows is so much more obvious than the way a 16-year-old learns and grows, or an adult. You can almost see a baby's brain working, figuring out how their hands work, checking the cause and effect of one thing after another. Our growth and change isn't as obvious once we're older, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. While the core of who you are remains the same, you are always you. Other things are likely to change as you grow. You'll find new hobbies, widen your perspectives about the world, gain new skills. Your tastes in food and music and movies will evolve, not all at once, but slowly, one experience at a time. Whether it's a new age, a new leadership position, a new relationship, or even just trying something new, know that as long as you still feel safe and are trusting yourself, it's okay if it feels different than you expected or than you thought it was supposed to feel. That doesn't mean you don't belong. It just might mean that you, the you that has been growing and evolving since you were born, are there, and you are going to make that world your own. I know that high school can be a lot, especially as you head further into AP classes and college applications. There will be a lot of things that are on your plate. These things, the balancing, the deadlines, the decisions about how to prioritize, will all prepare you for the things that come next. But remember that you've also already done things that prepare you for right now. So slow down, ask for help when you need it, trust yourself, and know that you're exactly where you need to be. Sending you all the love from inconceivably far into the future, 33-year-old Beckett. I have one more piece to share with you. This one is called Love Story, or the Taylor Swift nod. And I'm not going to explain it too much other than I wrote it for a grad school writing class on essays. That was a time when I was dating my now husband, so I've updated it a little bit, but a lot of it still remained the same. So, Love Story. Harris Dining Hall had a certain smell, one that hung on you long after your shift was over. Part grease, part sweat, part fledgling sense of purpose. This was my aura as I clocked out and checked my phone to find a missed call from Chris, the guy I was dating. Our relationship had begun in May after a long friendship, and it was nice to hear from him. He had just returned to his school after a family friend's wedding, the first time away from campus after we had both started at our respective colleges a few weeks ago. I was expecting a full report on the wedding and our usual update about how things are going, the standard for our now long-distance relationship. When I called, though, I got a breakup speech. I listened and voiced agreement more than I actually did, making it seem more mutual than it actually was. We weren't in love, hadn't even said that to one another, but it still hurt. I had been making new friends, but I was also still hanging on to the relationships I had from high school as I was navigating this new college life. When we hung up, I went not to my own dorm room, but to that of my friends, two girls who lived down the hall. They were both smart and funny and interesting people, and we were a few weeks into our friendship. One was a great hugger, the other preferred not to hug. I needed a hug at that moment, so I was a little disappointed when the non-hugger opened the door to reveal that the hugger was not at home. But she was a good friend. I still got my hug. When I look back at this moment, I see myself hurt, not so much for the end of that particular relationship, but for the abrupt end of a familiar relationship, especially at a time when so much was unfamiliar. And I also see the quality of a great friend, someone who was there for me when I needed it, despite how uncomfortable the act of hugging was for her. It was the end of one relationship, and one kind of relationship, and the beginning of another that ended up being far stronger and more enduring than the one I had with my high school boyfriend. With a title like Love Story, you may have been expecting that first relationship strand going differently, the epic tale of high school sweethearts. Instead, I like to focus on the latter, the love of friendship. It's not that I haven't or don't have romantic love. My husband is amazing and supportive, and I'm so glad that I have him in my life. But that's not the love story I want to dive into here. Romantic love, while worthy and life-changing, gets enough celebration. I think friendship deserves some too. I'm not no pop culture expert, but there aren't many examples of great friendships in movies, book, or TV. Even when they are present, they're usually sidelined next to the role of the romantic relationship. You have Robin, Lily, Ted, Barney, and Marshall in How I Met Your Mother, but the whole focus of the show is the romantic relationship. It's even in the title. Even with shows with friends at the center of the show, Friends, Sex and the City, Golden Girls, use friends largely as vehicles to explore the intricacies and often comedy related to romantic relationships. There are, of course, shows that do a better job of balancing or showcasing the value of both romantic and non-romantic relationships. One of my favorites is Parks and Rec. There's Leslie and Ben, or April and Andy, or any of the various other romantic pairings throughout the show. But there's equal storyline given to Leslie and Anne, April and Ron, Ron and Leslie, Ben and Chris, Donna and April. We see the value of both kinds of relationships through the series. And then there's Valentine's Day. This Leslie Knope holiday to celebrate female friendship, it is gender specific in the show, was even bled over into the real world. I love it. I love that because friendships are so important. The word friend comes from an Indo-European root meaning to love. Being a friend is loving someone in any number of ways. We don't feel a need to measure that friendship. We know that some friends are closer than others. That's okay. We also have friends who we see regularly and those who we only see sporadically. How often we see them doesn't necessarily correlate to how close we feel to that friend. We have room in our lives for many friends and for many types of friends. We only label a few, best friends and our romantic partners. Sometimes the label carries expectations, even with best friends. If you hear that someone's best friend wasn't there for them, or that a pair of friends you thought were close hadn't talked in a while, you may say or think, I thought they were best friends. So perhaps it is unfair to say that society doesn't have expectations on friendships, and better to say that we have expectations on labeled relationships. But I wonder if we put enough value on those non-romantic relationships in our media and creative pursuits as a culture, and also in our personal lives. I've always been a bit of a stickler for words, and I used to think you could only have one best friend. That's what the word best means, right? Better than all the rest. I've come to realize, though, that best friend can, and maybe should, be more of an indication of closeness, not necessarily a ranking system. That being said, I've called 4 people my best friend, and each one has taught me about myself and also about friendship. I met my first best friend in 5th grade. Kaylee was fun and spontaneous and new in town, looking for people to befriend and take along for the ride. I have memories of us riding bikes together around our neighborhood, holding our feet out in front of us as we let the pedals spin on the downhills. We built a fort under the stairs at her parents' house. She was my partner for every project. She made me feel like I belonged. When we got to junior high, something shifted. 7th grade Kaylee didn't want to be friends anymore, but there's no breakup speech for friendship, especially in middle school. In her book, All This Could Be Different, Sarah Duncan Matthews, from Pratt, writes about a young adult navigating life just after college. Sneha, the main character, is reflecting on an end of a close friendship and writes, enough with this sniffling. Just as romantic love faded or fractured, so too could friendship end. But nobody consoles you after a rupture with a beloved friend. There are a few movies ideal for watching while your tears salt pints of ice cream, no articles in women's magazines that you can skim with the hairdressers. You have only the ache, no script to accompany it, no ritual to give it shape. There was no ritual for middle school me either. I wonder if it would have helped. My second best friend was someone I met in preschool, but didn't really get to know until junior high. Jackie is kind and smart and fiercely loyal. I still have her home phone number memorized from dialing it so many times, and in high school, it was more often that Jackie that I was talking to when the phone minutes became unlimited after 9 p.m. That was a thing. We participated in different activities at school, but we always made time for each other. We went to different colleges, and we haven't lived in the same state, never mind the same city, since we graduated high school. Ben Rector has a song titled Old Friends. If you adjust some of the lyrics to be more central to Friend, Valentine, in the early 2000s, it could be about us. Because no one knows you like they know you. You can grow up, make new ones, but truth is, there's nothing like old friends, Rector writes. While I like to think that people I've met since childhood still know me, this rings a bit true. Jackie knows all of my siblings, she's hung out with my parents, she's seen me grow and change, and she lived alongside me for much of it. Rector doesn't write about that part, the growing and the changing, but I think that's one of the things to celebrate most about old friends. They know who you were, and they're still there through every version of you since. I know neither of us are the person we were when we unknowingly climbed a poison sumac tree the summer before freshman year, and our friendship has certainly changed, but that doesn't mean it's not there. I was in her wedding, she was in mine, we texted frequently, we sent Christmas cards. It's probably not the adult friendship we would have imagined for ourselves in high school, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Our adult friendship has taught me that there's no one way that friendship should or could look. Some friends you need to talk to every day. Some roots run deeper than that. My third best friend is Aaron, the non-hugger that hugged me anyway when my high school boyfriend broke up with me. In the 15 years since that day, our friendship too has grown and changed. First, we lived together in college and afterwards. In living together, we became our own little family unit. We went to each other for everything, spent most of our time together, and took care of each other. In the time when she was in grad school and I was in my first years of teaching, she showed up to support me at school events, like my performance in the school talent show. This may have been more to make fun of my dance moves, but still a supportive move. I made sure that she ate something during her long hours at studio. Erin herself has taught me much about how to look at things from different perspectives, how to make guacamole, and even how to drive a manual transmission car. We've done everything from studying to running a marathon together. My friendship with her has taught me so much more. When we first moved to separate cities, I remember us both being uneasy. We knew that our friendship was going to change, and change is scary. We were so ingrained in each other's daily lives that there was grief for the daily family life we had created and were leaving behind. As the years have gone by, though, we found our own rhythm, our own way of showing up for each other when we need it, even long distance. We try to see each other in person once a month, even if that just means an afternoon hanging out at the Outlet Mall about halfway between our cities. Erin has taught me that friendship, just like any relationship, takes effort to maintain. This is easier when you live together, but not impossible when you don't. Making friends as an adult is hard. There are only so many opportunities to meet new people, especially in situations where there's time to hang out in a low-stakes environment before really becoming friends. Work is one of those places, and that's why I met Lauren. Our friendship was forged slowly over staff meetings and shared lunch period, then more quickly as the pandemic hit and we became running buddies, one of the few people in each other's COVID bubble. Lauren is clever and thoughtful and kind. She cares deeply about our students, about the world, and about the people in her life. She shares her knowledge freely, and her excitement is contagious. She's taught me that friendship, like any relationship, is about knowing yourself just as much as it is about getting to know the other person. Figuring out who you are on your own is an important part about figuring out who you are and who you want to be with other people. She's also proved to me that you can meet people at any age and still feel like you've known each other forever. I've learned that being a friend can mean so many things, but we earn the label of friend so early in our lives that we enter into friendships without any real instructions or preconceived notions. We're called friends by parents and caregivers with people we simply sit next to, with no real choice in the matter, and we kind of just figure it out as we go. But by the time we are ready for romantic relationships, we've been primed with instructions from years of consuming mass media, the toys we play with, the shows and movies we watch, the stories that we read. In so much of this messaging, we see the princess find her prince, and then everything else fades away. The prince is all that matters, not the friends who helped you along the way. I worry that we forget those friends are important, not just along the way, but also after you found the one. I love love stories. I love stories about people finding someone who they trust and respect and who bring out the best in them. But can't that also be true for non-romantic relationships? Maybe I just wanted to take some time to celebrate my best friends, too, people that aren't traditionally celebrated but deserve to be shouted about. They are just as, if not in some cases more, steadfast as the relationships we celebrate with big weddings, no? Do we overlook non-romantic love stories because they are harder to measure? Because there's no ceremony or party to celebrate a commitment as friends? There's no ritual for friendships ending, but there's also little ritual to celebrate friendships forming or committing to be there for one another. The closest thing we have is a best friend set of half hearts or puzzle pieces or matching bracelets or whatever it is. Elementary school students recognize the importance of friendship. They swap these necklaces, make friendship bracelets. Maybe they've got something figured out there.
So much, Megan, and we can say hi in the back to little Allie, who is her child is here with us today, and family in the back too. Yeah. Our next grad, and thank you, Megan. Just shout out to 2009 when Megan was my student intern, and just the best. So glad to have you back, and so thrilled now to have Kristen Lobo join us as well. Please give a round of applause.
All right, so as the screen says, my name is Kristen. I graduated from Friend in 2013, and I'm currently living in New York. The piece of writing I'll be sharing with you today is a tiny bit inspired by the song title, Welcome to New York, very loosely. It's gonna take us a sec to get there though, so don't hold your breath for that. I'm gonna start by reading you an essay that I actually wrote in 2015, so 2 years into college, if you're good at math. I had published it on a little blog that I never shared with anyone, so I thought, why not share it right now? My career search began in the 4th grade. When my teacher handed out a paper cutout in the shape of a person one afternoon, I was ready for an art project, not the beginning of a worry that would hound me for the rest of my life. The assignment? Dress the cutout to look like you in your chosen career path. After days of agonizing and researching, I finally settled on what I figured was the smartest career move for an adventurous person like myself. As soon as I declared this, my teacher, Mrs. Trask, requested I speak with her privately. I said, I want to be a flight attendant. I could tell she was struggling to find the words to explain that being a flight attendant was not the most ambitious path for me, and I was flattered. She thought I was really smart, and she wanted me to choose something a little more nerdy. So I returned a day later with a new aspiration. I was surprised that she didn't seem more pleased that I decided to focus on her own career. My paper doll looked like a little old lady, complete with a shawl and a pencil in its ear. I guess I'll be an elementary school teacher when I grow up, I said, figuring that had to be the best option for me. But still, it didn't feel like it totally fit. My struggles were perpetuated by my 8th grade science teacher at Sunlight. One day he shared a story about the son of a close friend. The boy was extremely intelligent, he said. His ominous tone suggested that we were about to hear about a dramatic fall into a life of drugs and crime. But instead he proceeded to tell us about how the kid couldn't decide what he liked, so he ended up moving back home after college and working in a boring sales position. What a shame, he noted. What wasted potential. And that's why it's important to figure out what you like and what you want to do. It's never too early. I can still picture his finger wagging as he addressed the classroom full of preteens. I thought a lot about what he said. It was important, but how could I possibly choose a single thing to identify with? Just this one thing that would define my whole personality and be one of the first things people knew about me. And more importantly, how could I sit at just one job with no variety? It seemed endlessly boring. Going to different classes in school was barely enough stimulus for me. Choosing just one thing felt scary. High school took my career anxiety to a new level. Suddenly it seemed like there were so many more careers I could choose from, and I had to choose something to study in college. I applied to schools as one major, then called and asked if I could switch the next week. I ended up attending a university which places a huge emphasis on the very thing that scares me the most. As part of my degree, I have to complete 3 6-month full-time internships. And in order to do that, I have to choose a career that I want to pursue. Yikes. So here I am at Northeastern University, doing the thing that has caused me so much anxiety all these years, and I couldn't be more satisfied. It turns out that deciding on one industry or field or job does not dictate my happiness forever. It merely provides a starting point on my journey to landing somewhere in the long term. Despite entering the internship search process with my usual career panic, the experiences so far have been extremely valuable and totally different from one another. So far, I've worked at a big accounting firm and on a strategy team at NPR. I've learned a lot, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing, knowing what I liked and didn't like about the 2 different paths. To this day, I am grateful for my 4th grade teacher, who encouraged me to pursue careers that would push the limits of my potential. I'm also grateful to that junior high science teacher for encouraging me to start thinking sooner and more seriously about the person I wanted to become. These were adults that made me realize the immense value in exploring my passions. But there's one thing they didn't teach me: to be content and curious in doing whatever it is I am doing. I'm still repeating the mantra that I started back when I decorated that paper doll. I don't want to know what I want to do when I grow up. Only now, I'm okay with that. So when I first started this little essay, I thought, okay, great, a story about career, things you should be thinking about to prepare yourself for success. Perfect topic for students who are probably thinking about their futures. But the thing is, I wrote that to myself as sort of a letter in 2015. That was before I had other really awesome working experiences abroad, It was before I ended up finding an area of interest that I was, so desperately craving having. And that was before I graduated and found myself a career. I was able to figure out how to be okay with where I was before all of that. So I realized that this is actually a story about a toolbox. It's my AI-generated toolbox. Sorry if that doesn't look real. So you see, when I was thinking a lot of my future and struggling to figure out what comes next, I had a few tools in my toolbox that I had developed very consciously throughout my life. And it was through these tools that I was able to take this particular feeling that was bothering me for years and turn it into something more productive. Let me walk you through a few of those tools. So first up is the ability to confront my insecurities. Even since childhood, I knew I had a lot of insecurity about not being the best at things, not having a very specific passion, as you heard. Instead of avoiding these insecurities, I thought about them all the time. I got comfortable naming them, analyzing them, talking about them. These insecurities still come up today, and they're never going to fully be gone. But I never feel the need to squash them down. And that's been so valuable to getting myself into a healthy mindset about whatever bigger picture challenges I'm facing. A second tool that I reach for all the time is the ability to avoid all or nothing thinking. Whenever I talk to friends about career, they usually fall into two camps. One is a group that's passionate and knows exactly what they're going to do, and they feel confident in their career path forward. The other camp, the I don't know what I want to do, is often of the mindset that just because they don't have a specific passion, there's no point in looking for incremental progress in their job and their life satisfaction. They refuse to look for a more fulfilling career because there's no point unless they're going to find something that they're deeply or wildly passionate about. All or nothing. The essay I just read reminded me that I was able to make incremental progress in my career journey. I forced myself to try things. I went to a school that made me test out the waters by requiring me to get internships. I was aware that even if I didn't figure out my life's work, it was worth figuring out the small stuff. What am I good at? What qualities do I value in a job? Not everyone's like this. Take my sister. Despite being a great student, she dropped out of engineering school for a bunch of reasons, but mainly because she didn't see herself in the specific career that her civil engineering degree and classmates were preparing for. And if she didn't want to do that, she thought, she's probably not suited to any 9-to-5 or corporate job. So she dropped out of her program and spent several years working in the service industry. And I can tell you from personal experience, she doesn't like people all that much. So during this time, she fell victim to all or nothing thinking. If this path isn't right for me, I shouldn't bother pursuing any similar job. I'll just try to find happiness and satisfaction in the other parts of my life. And now, several years later, she's finally ready to figure out what's out there, and she's having a lot of trouble deciding how to finish school and what other careers she can pursue. So when I thought about it more, I realized that my toolbox has helped me through a lot more than just this one area of career. There are some tools that are very specific to me that help me function on a daily basis. To introduce these tools, I'm going to tell you a story about a rut. And this time I'll throw myself under the bus, not my sister. So the story is about COVID. At first, the changes brought about by COVID seemed like a good opportunity for me. Of course, there was a lot of tragedy in that time, but in the context of my little life, it seemed like it would be a much-needed pause. At the time, I was living in DC 2 years into my first job out of college. I was feeling stagnant. I was frustrated about my job, but I wasn't doing anything about it. I wasn't working out, I wasn't cultivating the social life I wanted. I was just working all the time, hanging out on the couch with my boyfriend Xavier, sleeping, not enough, and repeating. So when COVID hit, it seemed like it could be a good reset. Maybe it had something to do with where I was when COVID really hit the US. Xavier and I had been warned about it before a trip to the beautiful country of Jordan, but it wasn't until we were staying in some Bedouin camps in the desert near Petra that we realized we'd have to cut our trip short and head home immediately to avoid the travel bans. When we arrived back in DC, it felt like a bit of a slumber party to stay home rather than going to work every day. Though the extra time gave Xavier and I extra time to bicker, and I still wasn't working on any lifestyle improvements. My health and social life were just as bad as they'd always been. Eventually, both Xavier and I decided to end our leases in DC and move our stuff back to our parents' homes, me to Palatine and me to Philly. Being here at home alone that first time was when the lack of action really hit me. After a day of work hunched over my laptop, I'd melt right back into the couch, engorging myself in the latest Netflix drama like Tiger King, sometimes staying up all night just to binge and scroll. It was around that time I started to pull out the one tool in my toolbox that helped me just barely fuel myself through the next few years. The ability to say yes to opportunities that fall my way. So when Xavier mentioned taking a road trip, I said yes. When that turned into months of traveling throughout the US, I said, okay. When it turned into several international trips, I said yes. When my dad asked me to help him open a bar and live music venue in downtown Palatine, I said yes. I still hadn't invested in improving my life long term. In a lot of ways, I still felt like a shell of myself. But saying yes to all these things made those years of stagnation more than bearable, and it gave me a lot of incredible memories to look fondly upon. But underneath the short-term excitement of all the travel and entrepreneurship, I really was still languishing. 1 year turned into 2 years turned into 3. I hadn't had any intention of living at home, and now I'd been here longer than I was in DC. And I was still doing the same stuff. I wasn't investing in being healthy, mentally or physically. Even though I was extremely mobile, I felt so stuck. Until one day last year, I got a text from an old friend. Want to move to New York with me? And saying yes just one more time turned everything around. See, I told you to make a reference. Suddenly, I felt like I had a clear path out of this 3-year rut. Just a month and a half later, my friend and I moved. And immediately, I felt more like myself. Because another tool in my toolbox is putting myself in an energetic environment, particularly a busy city. It gives me life, it keeps me motivated, and it doesn't get much busier than New York City. So as I settled into my new home, I started to rediscover other everyday tools in my toolbox. One is having a supportive network. My boyfriend and I did break up shortly after my move, and I started reigniting a bunch of old friendships. It turned out that relying on a whole network of people is really empowering, in contrast to expecting everything from just one partner. Another tool I rediscovered was staying busy. If I have just 2 things to do, I'll never finish them, they won't go well, I'll feel really bad about them. But give me 20 really important things and strict deadlines, I'll do all of them and do them well. Being in New York, I'm able to fill up my week with tons of events and experiences that I look forward to. That gets me to finish my work quicker and better, and to avoid procrastination. I'm just at my best when I'm busy. Another critical tool for me has been external accountability. Having some pressure from other people helps me unlock better habits. So, knowing that I wanted to get more fit, I joined a very social gym. And it's working. Seeing the same people every week motivates me to show up and to lift more and to not get lazy. When I slowly but surely applied these tools and got in the habit of reaching for them and relying on them more frequently last year, I felt so much more of myself. I felt human again, and I don't feel at risk of being back in a rut like I was all those years. So you might have noticed that I've talked a lot about these tools, but I hadn't really talked about where I got them. And that's because most of them have built up from years of experiences unique to me. It was my willpower and attitude that forged them, shaped by the environment around me. Some of my tools are pretty fragile, don't always get the job done. Some I'm grateful to have developed from a young age, through positive influences in my life. My parents, teachers, and friends that introduced them to me. Some I developed from research. I'm not a psychologist by any means, but I've always had an interest in understanding why I am the way I am. So I've spent time looking at resources on psychology tricks, watching TED Talks, listening to podcasts, and more. Each and every one of us has their own toolbox. I encourage you to think about yours. Does it feel empty sometimes, like you're struggling to find the right tool when you're encountering a challenge in life? Maybe you're the opposite of how I was. You feel really good about your everyday toolbox, but there's not much in there helping you deal with the big picture stuff. Are your tools dusty? Are you out of practice with using some of them? Maybe some of the tools in your toolbox aren't honed in perfect, but they've been good enough for a quick fix. Some of these could be regarded as coping mechanisms, and you might want to think about upgrading or finding new tools that address the root cause of the issue. Don't be hesitant to look for resources or people that can help you fill up your toolbox. You have the internet at your fingertips and the support of an amazing community here at Front. So, what's in your toolbox? Thank you.
Wow, Thank you so much. All right, let's have one more round of applause. Marley, and we'll open this up for questions in just a minute. But I do want to recognize, and I think they each mentioned it in their speeches, but you know, when Mr. Anderson and I decided, we were thinking about like, what is the best way to celebrate Writers Week 30? And you know, a true thing, and we say this all the time, I'm sure your English teachers said this to you too, is that student writers, student hours are always the favorites for our friend audiences. That has been true since the beginning of Writers Week. It will also be true later this week when we get to some of our student presenter hours. And so we thought, you know what, we're gonna invite back some people who we have very high regard for and we think fondly of even to this day. And so we sent a whole bunch of emails and we had no idea what was gonna happen, right? And with the professional writers that we invite, they or their agents are quite comfortable ignoring us for a week or 2 weeks, or sometimes they never get back to us at all. But our graduates emailed us back right away. There was big energy in the emails and it was just so much fun. And it was a little bit of, you know, that magic that we all recognize with Writers Week in one spot. And so, you know, Kristen, as she just shared, came here from New York. Megan traveled here from Ohio. Everyone is really going out of their way to celebrate Writers Week 30 with us, with you. And so, just before we open for questions, let's just do one more big applause. We tell our students, right, like you guys, like we never take your sharing your writing for granted. We never take your sharing your writing for granted. That was just wonderful, just wonderful. All right, so who has a couple of questions, either for both of our guests or one of our guests? Either one is fine. Yes. Kristen is a world traveler. Kristen, you want to tell us about Antarctica?
I actually can't tell you that much about Antarctica because I got COVID in Antarctica. So I saw some stuff out of a little porthole and then I returned to Argentina after that. So, yeah.
Yes, down here in front. What is your job that you travel so much?
Purely recreation. I just work at a tech company and I can work remotely, so I took full advantage of that during COVID. Yeah, I work at the same company. I actually work in person in New York. We have a little office, so yeah, same thing like I've been doing for the past 2 years.
Other questions that you may have? Yes, over here on the side. Favorite Parks and Rec relationship?
That's a tough one. There are so many good ones, but I think I'd have to say April and Ron, because I think there's just a good one.
Yeah, I think, not to pick a romantic relationship, but I think Andy and April, I really like, you know, you see relationships pictured in the media in a certain kind of way, and that is a very strange one. It's nice to show the diversity of different kinds of romantic relationships.
Yes. Did either of you speak at Writers Week when you were in high school?
I did. I think junior and senior year. I have no idea what I said. I do not remember, but I was here. There is a picture up to date of me. Maybe the same couch, but
1 year, but yeah.
Oh, we have one more, yes. Sid. Was it cold?
Not as cold as you think. But yeah, very kind of fun.
All right, well, this was a great start to Writers Week, 4th hour.